on this episode of Indiana Education Insight.
Education is a lifetime pursuit. And so through my work with my local credit union, I was able to work with low-income families here in Colorado, people who really need to learn how the financial system works and what's really best for them.
Every week, the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents is taking you inside today's Indiana education collaboration and tomorrow's education trends. We're staying on the pulse of public school innovators throughout Indiana and beyond. Join our conversation and contribute to our upcoming topics at iapssin.org/podcast. Here's your host, Dr.J.T. Koopman.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Indiana Education Insight. I'm Dr. J.T. Koopman, Executive Director of the IAPSS. This podcast is being delivered by our IPSS team and produced by our friends at Edge Media Studios. As Executive Director of IPSS, I'm excited to bring you this weekly show where we feature Indiana education innovators from all over our great state, from students to superintendents. We'll also be talking to higher education leaders and educators at the state level as we work together as proactive public education advocates. That's why IPSS is here and why we're proud to bring you this show. Every week we're talking about trending topics in the public education space while bringing in Indiana education innovators to hear their perspective. As with any organization, it takes great leadership to be successful, and that is one of the main missions of IPSS, developing great school district leaders. It is always great to have experienced and passionate educators joining us on the show, so let's get today's conversation going.
Topics and trends in Indiana education.
Today's guests are Karol Griffith, Director of Financial Empowerment and Community Outreach and historian at Teachers Credit Union, and Drew Guthrie, Chief Operating Officer at Fool Proof, along with Mike Sheffer, Director of Education for Fool Proof. They have made several presentations as well as numerous public speaking engagements, so they've been instrumental in shaping the conversation about Indiana public schools and have the ability to look at education from various lenses, which is very important. Of course, they have been tremendous public school education advocates. Let's find out how they view issues in Indiana public schools. Welcome, Mrs. Griffin, Mr. Guthrie, and Mr. Sheffer. We're thrilled to have you join us on today's podcast. So if you could, please tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and your various roles in your work with public schools. Karol, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us on today. We appreciate that. Let me start a little bit with a background on Teachers Credit Union because that will help shape the discussion today, and the credit union's role and my role in public schools. TCU started in 1931 by South Bend Community School teachers, 8 of them. It was during the Great Depression, and at that time, there was a 9-month salary was the way that they were paid. So the summer months were quite difficult for cash flow. So this group of teachers were limited to what traditional sources they could get funding at or loans, and banks were failing at the same time. So they began a research to define an organization that they could pool their savings together as members and lend to those who needed money during those times. So thus the credit union was formed, and that laid the groundwork for what we do today in serving our members, many of them who are educators. And we have been committed to educators and meeting their personal financial needs throughout the state. I've been at TCU for 41 years, and I've served in many roles while there, and serving members directly in our community and schools. One of the things that I have done in many classrooms is go in and teach personal finance, also to talk about products and services that financial institutions offer. The other thing that we've done is built school relationships with administrators, principals, and teachers alike, many of them who are our members. And I also served as TCU Foundation Executive Director for several years. And we worked with public schools who were submitting grant requests for programs in their schools, both during and after school hours, as well as college scholarships. So that's a little of my background.
Wow, and that historian part came out loud and clear on that since 1931. That's absolutely amazing. How about you, Drew?
JT. Yeah, my background is kind of funny because it's a bridge between the credit union community and the education community. I got my start at a credit union out here in Colorado, and I was able to work my way through the ranks there as I was putting myself through both my undergraduate and graduate degrees. And from that, I learned what an important role education is in the community at large. And it doesn't stop with just at the end of high school, at the end of college. Education is a lifetime pursuit. And so through my work with my local credit union, I was able to work with low-income families here in Colorado, people who really need to learn how the financial system works and what's really best for them. And through my experience with my local credit union here, I was able to get on board with Fool Proof because, as we'll discuss, Fool Proof teaches financial literacy in a very unique way. It's completely different than other programs that are out there. And goes so far beyond just the rote skills that are taught. And education has been a passion throughout my life, and I am so excited to be able to partner with a wonderful organization like TCU to help bring the foolproof methodology to Indiana communities, not only in the schools, but also the community at large.
Okay, well, thank you, Drew. Mike, it's your turn.
Well, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. I'm Mike Sheffer. I'm the Director of Education for Fool Proof. I had taught for 32 years in upstate New York, Corning Painted Post School District. I taught finance and personal finance and economics. I coached basketball and golf. I met the Fool Proof team when they were working with a local credit union in Corning, and it was at the beginning of Fool Proof that I was involved. I started working with the CEO, Will Jahu, with developing of modules and tests. And I was the first foolproof teacher, and our school, Corning Painted Post, was the first foolproof school. So now, as I retired last August after 32 years, I'm now, like I said, the Director of Education. I go around the country giving presentations, workshops, educating teachers and community groups and administrators on how to implement foolproof into their classrooms. I'm also involved in the curriculum development and the test development for the Foolproof Foundation.
Great. Tremendous background, all of you, in relationship to credit unions and financial literacy. Karol, TCU certainly has grown since 1931. Can you explain some of the reasons and the recent changes, including the growth of your membership?
Sure. Probably best to start with our vision and our mission, because that kind of lays the groundwork for where we've come and where we are today and where we're planning on developing into the future. But we partner with our communities. That's part of our mission, to partner with our communities to achieve their financial success, one member at a time. And our mission is really to listen to people, to understand and explore the solutions to help them on their path to achieving financial success. And we do that through building relationships with our members and the community. We invest in products and services and programs and initiatives that make the community better for all. And so we look at this as investing our time and our talent and our treasure. And of course, over the years, with this mission and vision, we've really grown and expanded our field of membership to the broader community of people who could really benefit from these types of services and programs. We've expanded our school relationships throughout the state of Indiana, and it's very localized. It's the personal connection that really makes a difference in our communities with our managers and our team members and staff. And then, of course, we've expanded our products and services as we've grown to really expand savings and investments and planning and just the lending products to meet the needs of our members and membership in the community at large. And so while we started with these 8 public school teachers that I mentioned, who had this vision to help one another, we now serve over 300,000 or close to 300,000 members throughout Indiana and Southwest Michigan and 54 local communities. And we are the largest credit union in Indiana.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So please tell us about the financial literacy program that TCU launched in 2016 and the reasons behind it.
Sure. As I mentioned, TCU is committed to the financial well-being of our membership and the members and communities. And so as such, that means providing a broad range of not only products and services, but educational resources and tools for our members. And we've done that for many years, but it's not been with the same intensity and focus that we have in more recent years. And here's why. Over the last 5 or 6 years, of course, we went through the downturn of the economy in 2008. And since that time, there have been a lot of organizations that have really taken a look at, how did we weather that storm as Americans? And so a number of research companies have done a lot of research, including one done by the George Washington University in 2012 that really studied millennials, young people, and their view of money and how well are they prepared for the future. And they found that 76% of millennials are financially illiterate, and 30% are just financially fragile. With only 8% of our young people today are financially literate to any degree. But it's not just our young people. It's much broader than that. And according to the Federal Reserve of Boston, who did a study just a few years ago, 44% of Americans don't even have $400 to weather the storm of an unexpected emergency. And also another study that was done was the Center for Financial Innovation, and they found that 57% of Americans, that's 138 million people, are just struggling financially. So TCU wanted to do more in this space and really try to help the communities that we serve, not only with the products and services that meets their needs, but with the tools and resources to understand what it takes to make good and wise financial decisions for a lifetime. So thus led us to do a little bit more research in this area of our own, to work with a curriculum partner, which we researched for many months, and we connected with Fool Proof. And part of the reason we aligned with Fool Proof, and they are now our curriculum partner, is because we have similar mission alignments on what we're trying to achieve in improving the financial skills of the communities. We also wanted to make sure that the curriculum, particularly for our schools, met the Indiana academic standards, and it does for our middle school and high school students. It needed to be web-driven, very interactive. That's how students learn today. Sure. Pre- and post-testing and resources for our teachers. Very important that they have lesson plans and so forth developed for them. They have enough on their plate to do, and so if we can help them in any way to provide the curriculum that they can take and use in their classrooms, the full extent of it, or pieces and parts of it to make it flexible, it needed to be, and it is. And so we liked the ability of the program to be plugged in and played right in any of their classrooms, whether it's an economics class, a business class, a personal finance class, or a life skills type class. And the other big thing for us, it was very important that we identify an organization that had some strong endorsements. And Fool Proof is the only organization that has the endorsement of 4 national consumer advocacy groups, including the Consumer Federation of America, the National Association of Consumer Advocates, the Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, and Public Citizen. And that was very important to us.
Well, I can't tell you how necessary this is for our children. Is this kind of individualized by the student? Is it plugged in as part of the curriculum in another classroom? And kind of what's the duration of a segment of financial literacy?
It can be both. The teachers have the full flexibility to teach it as a full classroom that can be plugged into one of those courses that I mentioned, or it can be standalone. Each lesson, they're called modules, is approximately 45 minutes at the high school level, okay. A little shorter at the middle school level.
And our teachers provided professional development by Fool Proof to implement this in their curriculum?
They're provided all the resources and the tools, lesson plans, the activities, So it's pretty plug and play.
Okay.
And now, of course, if they have any questions, they can contact us, contact Fool Proof, and we kind of walk them through that process.
That is terrific. Drew, there are thousands of financial literacy programs out there. So what is so different about Fool Proof?
JT, a lot of it comes down to exactly the statistics that Karol was talking about, in that, as you said, there are thousands of financial literacy programs out there. So what's the disconnect? Why are so many Americans struggling to get by with, emergency savings to just their general financial knowledge? And that's something that Fool Proof really tackles. And like I said in my introduction, we go beyond the rote skills. There are thousands of programs that teach the technical money skills, but we take it to a different level. We do what's called healthy skepticism. And what healthy skepticism really is it goes beyond the technical aspects of, how to balance a checkbook, what's a budget, the difference between a stock and a bond. We teach all of that. But as the experts out there will tell you, that basic information just isn't working. That's not enough. That's not what kids and frankly, consumers of all ages need. So we partner with many consumer organizations, as Karol mentioned, but also education experts. One that I would like to quote is Dr. Lauren Willis. She wrote a paper called Against Financial Literacy Education. And it seems kind of ironic for a financial literacy person to be bringing up an article of that title. But what Dr. Willis really goes into is that money is the financial system is always changing. There are always new products and new twists on what's out there.
Right.
So what kids really need to learn is how to be able to deal with those changes. What are the questions that need to be asked, and how do they actually figure out what is best for them in their area of life? So that's what the Fool Proof program really talks about. In that healthy skepticism, we look at what happens to an individual at a certain age, middle school, high school, or beyond, see what messages really reflect what's going on in their life right now, and mold our modules to be able to meet their needs when they need it, and to help build that confidence to be able to ask those tough questions to anyone who might want to touch their money or their welfare.
That makes sense. Why don't others teach healthy skepticism?
That's a great question, JT. I wish I had a stock answer for you. But one big problem with financial literacy is that it is designed to teach to the test. As Karol mentioned, there are financial literacy standards for both middle and high school in Indiana. Fool Proof thinks that's fantastic. We are absolute advocates for making sure that kids get exposed to this financial education. The younger, the better. As soon as they start thinking, they're exposed to marketing, and they need to know how to deal with that. So to answer your question about why other programs don't teach healthy skepticism, I think a lot of it really gets down to looking at what the tests require and making sure that those topics are covered, and not working in the extra critical thinking, that extra healthy skepticism that makes Fool Proof truly unique.
Well, let's go to the teacher side of this. Mike, being a former teacher and an administrator, how do you teach healthy skepticism?
Well, JT, it's really not easy. I think what you have to have a mindset that, Fool Proof is developed by teachers and consumer advocates across the country. So in our conversations with them, we were trying to get to the point of how do we really teach the healthy skepticism? How do we go about doing this and not just do the rote repetition of financial literacy? The one thing that we've put into Fool Proof, and the one thing that's been proven unique by us, is the idea that you need to question everyone. You need to go into the process of someone's trying to separate you from your money. And we want to give the students in our consumer groups and everyone else who is involved in Fool Proof the ability to understand that they want to go ahead and question it. They want to do the research. They want to go ahead and understand that a marketer's role is to separate them from their money. And once they do that, they still need to have the rote skills of financial literacy, but they also have to have the ability to make critical thinking skills throughout their life. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do in Foolproof, with the idea of the critical thinking skills are embedded into modules. And once they're embedded into modules, we can actually go ahead and teach, the rote repetition of financial literacy.
Well, I think in our curriculum world, we introduce a lesson with the essential question, and I'm hearing some of that in the way you've developed this curriculum. So with the emphasis on healthy skepticism, is that the only significant difference in the foolproof curriculum versus others?
No, there's a lot of great stuff in the foolproof curriculum that separates from others. The one thing is, when we developed Foolproof in the beginning, one of the things that I noticed is Will DeHoo, our CEO, was a little younger at the time, came into my classroom, and he did a presentation on scams against young people. And they were mesmerized by Will. They listened to him. Will was a young person talking to young people. So one of the things that we decided at that point was we wanted to do peer-to-peer teaching. We wanted to make sure the students were talked to and not talked at. As teachers and administrators and parents, we think we have that influence on our children, our students, but in reality, they're going to listen to a little bit more from a person of their age. The other thing that Foolproof does is, and as Karol mentioned, we have the pre and the post test. The pre and the post test really measures the amount of information that our students learn. And then in the process, we also have standard alignment for our high school and our middle school program to all of our partners throughout the state. And of course, in Indiana, we have that also. And then the teaching guides and the preparation for the teacher to be able to use Foolproof as an interactive textbook, or they could use it turnkey. So they have the ability in a lot of ways to use Foolproof in the way that they see that their class will learn.
Sure.
For instance, we also have a special education version of Foolproof. We also have randomized tests. So in the process that you can control your evaluation. And of course, we have graded tests for the teachers that are, graded by the back end of Foolproof, along with a program that tracks the progress for the teachers of their students. So
how do we know these resources will work?
Well, we go back to the pre and the post test. So our 2016, 2017 numbers of our students with the pre-test, they do all the modules in Foolproof, and they take the post test. And every module has a test. Every module, there's 18 modules in Foolproof for high school. There are 2 guided practice modules. 16 of the modules have rigor and relevance exams. So they are actually testing what has been taught in the modules. But the pre and the post tests are key. I mean, I'm a former teacher. I understand standard learning objectives. The administrator wants to see what the class, what your lesson is, what is your outcome at the end. The pre and post test really shows that for our teachers. So our 2016 and 2017 numbers show a 39.9% increase in our pre and post test scores, of course, after using the Foolproof modules. The other thing we do is we do a lot of data gathering from teachers and from students and our end users. But at the end of our 18th module, prior to the post test, the students take, they take a survey. And our numbers are out of 150,000 surveys that we have collected. 70% of the students say they would work through a Foolproof module on their own, in their own time. So to us, that is one of the best stats that when you look at a development of a program and you look at development of curriculum and you look at your usage, if a student says that 70% would work on something on their own time, that's really meaningful for us.
Absolutely. We understand this program is available not just in Indiana, thanks to TCU, of course, but nationwide throughout other funding partners. Can you tell us how the program is growing and how many schools and teachers use the program?
So one of the things with Foolproof, we started in one school and one teacher. It was me and so we're very proud of our usage. And the one thing that we always want to do is we want to thank our teachers, our students, and our partners for spreading the word of Foolproof. Foolproof is word of mouth. It is a grassroots organization, and we go from school to school, teacher to teacher, partner to partner. And what happens is that people hear about Foolproof and kind of like what they hear, and then the contact is made. So I have some stats for you. As of June 2016, Foolproof for Schools has brought meaningful financial instruction to 275,000 students nationwide and 5,000 plus schools and over 7,000 teachers. And over 11% of the nation's financial literacy classes have used our curriculum.
Well, I have to share something with you. Speaking of word of mouth, is I read an email right before we started the show today from a superintendent that was actually asking about financial literacy classes. So guess who I'm going to refer him to? Drew? Can you share more about all these resources that are available? And is there a cost to our schools? And are there adult programs as well as programs for students and teachers?
JT, we have programs for all ages, from middle school through retirement. And thanks to the generous support of TCU, it is free to any end user in Indiana. It is an amazing program to be able to have a partner like TCU who really believes in the relevance and what Foolproof teaches and how we teach it. Mm-hmm. So our programs, we've talked about, Foolproof for middle school, Foolproof for high school. Those are aligned to standards. One other really important piece to that is in all this feedback and all the peer-to-peer, one of the greatest sources of feedback are teachers. Foolproof has been around for 15 years, and we have designed our program based on teacher feedback. We want to know how it works in the classroom, how kids are interacting with it, and then what we can do to help increase the educational relevancy for the classroom. So we really work with both teachers, students, education experts for our education for children. When we start talking about once you leave school, once you graduate from high school, now what? So it's a whole different world being out there on your own, having to pay your own bills, come up with your own rent, buying your first car, important life decisions like that. So we have a modular program called Foolproof Solo that's designed for just that period in life. But we also realize that adults are extremely busy. Not all of them can sit down for a whole module session. So we have both articles, videos, guides, all straight through the TCU website, again, free for everyone. So it's that just-in-time education. So, for example, if I'm going out and wanting to buy a home, I need to know what questions I need to ask. I need to make sure that it fits in my budget properly and that I get what's best for me and my family. Mm-hmm. So thanks to TCU, we have mortgage guides out there, home buying guides that help consumers go through that very important process of home buying. There are also tons of other guides, such as student loans. And that is such a huge financial burden. Yep. On so many families. And what we did was design 6 different guides based on, okay, where are you in life? Are you thinking about going to school, needing to potentially take out some financial aid? Are you in school? Are you out? Are you a parent who wants to make sure that their kids are afforded the best type of education that you can afford? So we want to make sure that those guides teach exactly to how they're going to be used in the real world. And then just finally, we have those consumer guides and videos and articles that are refreshed. We have multiple articles and videos that come out every single month, fresh on TCU's website, that really speak to what's going on in life. So, for example, we recently had the whole Facebook issue and the privacy concerns through different hacks out there, anywhere from Target or you pick the hack. There have been plenty of them. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that people know, okay, what exactly happened? Okay, what's the fact? What are the facts behind this? How could this affect me? And then what do I do to protect myself? And that very simple formula has worked time and time again for working with people and making sure that they have the right information right when they need it. And thanks to TCU, it is free for all Hoosiers throughout the TCU website.
That is phenomenal. We heard from Karol as to why TCU was selected, or why TCU selected Foolproof as their curriculum partner. Can you tell us why Foolproof partnered with the credit union?
JT, we look for organizations that share the same mission and vision. And as Karol alluded to in the beginning, our Foolproof and TCU's mission and vision align nearly perfectly, because we're all about helping our individual communities. And for Foolproof, our community is nationwide. So we want to look at, as Mike alluded to, those grassroots efforts, being able to get into the local communities. So when we initially started our conversations with Karol and the TCU team, we asked them a lot of questions. We wanted to find out, okay, how do you interact with your community? What are your goals? Right. And what we really found is that TCU cares about making sure that their community members make the right decisions for them. TCU has some wonderful products that they are very good at promoting, but they wanted to have the educational component along with it. So when you go out and look for resources on TCU's website that are supplied by Foolproof, Foolproof provides a completely independent voice. And that's what we need in our partners, is to realize the value of that independent voice, where TCU or any of our other sponsors and partners do not get to influence how Foolproof deals with certain issues. And that's a big leap, and it's a wonderful partnership that we've developed with TCU, in that knowing that they want to help their community, that they're willing to put out these independent guides and resources to go along with the products that they promote on their own. To me, it's a very powerful partnership that continues to grow.
Well, thanks, Drew. I appreciate that. So now that we have a broader understanding of the need for financial literacy and this unique program, can you tell us how teachers and administrators can access this program, Karol?
Sure. It's very easy, just tcunet.com/empower. And once they are there, they will see both the adult program, the consumer guides, news articles, videos. There's a community section that houses all of this, along with the solo program that's been mentioned. And then for the schools, the middle schools and high schools, there is a school section. And that's how teachers and administrators will go in and register. And once they're registered for the program, which we've mentioned many times is free to them, they can go in and explore, take a look at all those modules, take a look at what is available in each module, and look at the activities and everything, and play around with it.
That is absolutely phenomenal. TCU really has done wonderful things for our students, our communities, and quite honestly, Foolproof program sounds like an astounding program. And I'm going to check out tcunet.com/empower and see what I can find there myself. Great. So in closing, I'd like to continue this dialogue in the future podcast. So I have invited both of our guests from TCU and Foolproof to another session on August 20th to discuss how to effectively use the program in classrooms and additional resources that are available. Thank you, Mrs. Griffin, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Sheffer, this edition of Indiana Education Insight. There are many factors that go into preparing all students to become lifelong learners and contributors in the 21st century. As such, we need to begin to change the dialogue. We are approaching another General Assembly session in 2019 with the knowledge that we need to have a different approach on how schools are recruiting and retaining teachers. And as an important aspect of teachers, and an important aspect of that is teacher salary as well as respect of the profession. In light of the fact that educators are the very fabric upon which this country was built, and the primary pillar in our democracy, should this not be part of the public dialogue? I see these as investments in our children and in our state, not as an expenditure. Perhaps we can pursue this issue and others in another segment. On our next show, we will continue to pursue these issues pertinent to Indiana public schools. Perhaps we can provide some additional insight into the State House and education. Join us for that and more on the next Insight into Indiana Education. Thanks for being part of education, and please stand up for Indiana public schools.